Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Just getting my power cables going.
Me too. Trying to set up my webcam. Oh, that's great.
This is our life, eh?
That's
Technologists.
a great view we've got of me.
Yeah.
Yeah. The height is just perfect. Let's fix that. There we go.
Okay. Let's see.
So for some reason, it didn't. I just want to check if I am the host. Yeah, no, I think I'm the host.
Yeah.
Because I logged in on my iPad and it said, you are now the host of this meeting. I was like, why am I the host? Because I wanted to log in twice. Yeah, it's very odd.
Just going to test my sound quickly.
Okay, great. I'm also going to... Okay, so who can share?
How's that? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly, yeah.
Good.
Okay, good. And then...
Let me just get my book.
Let's hope we have no trolls. I don't think we will.
Yes, I haven't come across a troll yet, but yeah, let's hope we don't have trolls.
Yeah, exactly. So here we have... I'll show you what we've got going here.
Okay.
So this is just going to keep running for us. Look at that.
Cool.
Now, just trying to see. Ah, Sean has joined us. Hello, Sean. Good to see you. All right, so I'm going to put everybody on.
What do you mean? I mean, like, yeah.
Okay, so I've got you on mute, Ryan. So you just need to take yourself off mute. Press your space bar.
Unmute, okay.
Here we go.
Yeah, they're unmuted.
Okay, excellent. The only other thing I need to do is figure out why it's not recording. Oh, it is recording. Okay. We're all ready to go. Fancy that.
Oh,
So that we can just let the PowerPoint show play and chillax, basically.
well, I'm going to make a cup of tea.
Can you hear the music, by the way?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Fantastic. Okay, good. Well, then we sorted. Yeah. So yeah, you can put your camera off if you like, and go have some tea and relax.
I'm going to bring my tea here.
right, everybody. Good evening and welcome to Plant People. So I think we may as well get started, and I'm sure that our latecomers can just log in as they come along. So I hope everybody's doing well, and it's been a long time since we have seen all of you. So just to get started, because there's a lot of us, we're going to do something a bit fun. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to open up your browser and go to a website called www.mentimeter.com. Mentimeter.com, MENTI meter.com. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type the link in for you. And sorry, not Mentimeter, just Menti, much easier, menti.com. And when you get there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly put in chat. So I'm going to put a code for you. And I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to ask you to describe to me how you are all feeling. How are you all feeling? Because here we are all connecting with each other for the first time since lockdown. And I'm going to ask you to tell me, how is everybody feeling? So I'm going to do the same, and I'm going to go to mentimeter.com and just type in 3 emotions as to how you're feeling. How's everybody doing? So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to put in that code I gave you. Oh, my apologies. It seems to be taking us to the wrong slide. That's interesting. Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to have to come to that one afterwards. So I tell you what we're going to do. I don't know why it's not working like it should. That's our next question. So let's go rather to the Zoom chat then. My apologies for that. Are you all getting the same slide that I'm getting? And by the way, if you just press your space bar, it's going to unmute you. So let's just see what you guys are seeing. So I'm going to stop sharing. All right, so let's just type into the chat. If everyone knows how to use the chat button, if you move your mouse button to the bottom, you should get chat. If you're working on a mobile device, your chat bar will appear somewhere. Just type 3 emotions and let's see how everybody is feeling. How are you all doing? How's everyone holding up since lockdown? Are you feeling frazzled? Are you feeling isolated? Are you feeling lonely? Are you feeling strong? Are you feeling disconnected? Are you missing everyone? Are you taking strain? Are you holding up well? Let's get some feelings. I'm going to write my feelings. So we're just getting a good sense of the general mood. I'm glad to see Miles is good, busy, tired, relaxed, reorientated, reset, stressed, excited, tired, loving the warm air. good. I'm glad to see Francis feeling good, inspired, motivated, ready. Oh, I love the use of emoticons, Kim. You've got this technology down to a T. Excited, somewhat anxious, but overall good. Yeah, anxiety is something I think we've all been struggling with. Hey, it's been like the Chinese curse. May you have interesting times. Definitely, we've been having interesting times, that's for sure. Who would have thought this is how we would be spending 2020? I saw a really great meme the other day, and it was, my mom used to say, if you do that again, I'm going to smack you so hard, I'm going to send you back to the previous year. Please, Mom, would you do that? And another one that said, I'm not getting a diary for next year until I can see the trailer first. Well, it's so good to have everybody here. Welcome to our first Plant People online event. It's a great way to continue with our Plant People events that everybody came to really enjoy, and now we can include the whole country. We can also upload these talks afterwards onto YouTube. So what we'll do shortly is we're going to go off video, and we're going to hand over to Ryan. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch the view, and now we're going to see if we can get Mentimeter to work. So going back to that Mentimeter link I sent you, if everyone wouldn't mind going there, let's start out with some questions. And for our latecomers, I will just update you all. So what we're doing is we're going to Mentimeter. We just type in menti.com, and in Menti, what you're going to do is you're going to insert a code 5812710, which I'm going to quickly paste into the chat once again. And let me just do that. And what I want you to do is to just insert your, can everybody see Mentimeter on my screen share? And what you're going to do is can you see that? Is that what I'm sharing right now? And all that you're going to do is you are going to rate, how transformational do you rate microdosing as a practice? So the code for Mentimeter is 5812710. 5812710. So is everyone able to do that? Is that working for you? Let's see some thumbs up. Okay, great. So let me quickly give you some time for that, just to get some impressions. And you press submit. All right. So now what we're going to do is have a look at the results. So hopefully it will generate our results and we can get an idea in terms of how, this is what we were hoping to see, but this question didn't come up. Well, this is all very frustrating because I've just paid a lot of money to subscribe to the software, which is not working like it should. Don't you just love technology, I tell you? So hold on a second for me. And let me just log in over here. And let me see if I can find our results for you. Well, that is very upsetting, I must say. I'm so sorry, guys. I was hoping to show off something really fancy to you. Maybe it'll work on the second link just now. And while Ryan's talking, I'll see if I can pull up that image for you. So that better work, otherwise I want my money back. All right. So basically what I was hoping to get from you guys, and let's work in the chat. The first question I wanted to ask you guys is, obviously, how effective do you think microdosing is? So let's just get you guys to type it into the chat quickly. Do you think it's effective? Do you think it's not effective? Do you think that it's moderately effective? So just type in what your impressions are in terms of how effective you think microdosing is. And you can even put in a rating scale, 1 to 10, if that's easier for you. So we're just trying to get some initial impressions in terms of how effective do you think microdosing is? Because obviously that's what our topic is for this evening. How effective do you think it is? Not effective, effective. Let's hear some more. So Miles says feeling fatigue and depression, dubious effective, depends on the person, moderately effective, very effective, needs more experimentation. Charlie says effective. Let's hear some more. Very effective. So some mixed impressions. Okay, so that's great. It's good to get some good responses. So the next question I have for you guys is moderately effective when combined with intent and evaluation. Yes, thank you for that. Very effective depending on the client and capability of the body's responses, needs to be monitored. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, some very, very useful input. Thank you. And effective for what intention though, I suppose. Yeah, thank you. Let's get some, another question I'd like to ask you guys. What plants have you worked with so far? What plants have you worked with so far? If you're willing to share. If you're not, don't worry. And by the way, the chat responses, don't get saved, and I won't mention anybody's names. So if anyone wants to mention, and we'll just name some of them that come up for you. We're just trying to get an idea. Okay, Soma. Microdosing Changa. I'm not too sure how you would do that. That's really interesting. Okay. And you guys can actually all see the Skeletium. That's a really interesting one. Mandrake. Wow, that's interesting. Iboga, yeah. Psilocybin, yeah. Interesting, and interesting to see that no one has actually mentioned San Pedro as yet. All right, some interesting ones. There we go. Got some San Pedro coming up. It's nice to see. Yeah, I agree. Mandrake, definitely unexpected. I actually wouldn't know where to get Mandrake. I think my knowledge of it is you've got to go to a witch's swamp and pull it out and it screams at you. That's about as much as I know about Mandrake. Peyote, wow, that's impressive. Wow, yeah, lovely variety. And what plants do you have a specific interest in learning about? What plants? So from now on, just put your responses there in terms of what plants would you like to really hear more about in terms of microdosing? What would you like to hear more about? What do you have a specific interest in? What plants do you have a specific interest in? microdosing. Okay. See, there's some interest in mushrooms, interest in San Pedro. Great. Okay. Common themes. Iboga's coming up. That's good to hear. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Iboga's coming up. All right. Okay. And if anyone else wants to enter anything else, go for it. All right, super. Thank you so much for your responses. I really appreciated everyone. It's just nice to get a bit of insight in terms of where you're all at and what your interest is. So I just wanted to kick off the session and get some input. And I'm going to be handing over to Ryan now. And Ryan is one of our most favorite people in the community. We just really love him so much. He is a very experienced and very respected healer. He's also a qualified psychologist, and he's been working with microdosing, and he's got some really interesting research to share with us. And it's such a joy to hear Ryan speak and to have him share with us. So what our experience of Ryan has been is that he always shares from such a integrous place and from deep experience. And I just would really like to welcome Ryan tonight. And what we will do is we will have questions and answers at the end. So everyone, please, do write down any questions that you've got, and then we'll open up for Q&A at the end of the session. All right, so very warm welcome, and over to Ryan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alana. I really appreciate your kind words and hosting me tonight. And it's a
Ryan, you seem to have gone on mute somehow.
How's that? Is that better?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alana. I really appreciate your words and your kind welcoming. It's really a privilege to be here and to be with everyone tonight. Can't see some of you. Zoom is so confusing because where there's no face, it feels like we have to imagine who that person is. But I see lots of black faces, but I'm imagining who you guys are. If you could switch your cameras on, it would make my job a little easier, because it's nice for this to be really interactive as possible. So even one little camera coming on would be nice. Yeah, I'm going to can I just first say, how's my sound? Can everyone hear me okay? Good, okay. So I'm going to do a bit of a presentation, but I also don't want to spend too much time on PowerPoint. So PowerPoint's really just there as a backdrop, and I'm going to present, like Alana said, I'm going to present some very much anecdotal research. There's nothing very formal in this space that I've done. It's just more collecting stories and sharing some of those stories. So I'll share some of that research on PowerPoint. And I'm actually just going to start at PowerPoint now. Alana, will I be able to share my screen?
Yes. Okay. Yes, you should. Yeah. Is it working?
Okay, let's just see. I don't see an option to. No, I don't see an option to share.
I've got it on. Is it working?
No, I don't see an option. It's usually at the top. Hey, it says, oh, there it is. I've got.
Ah, excellent, excellent.
There we go. Okay. So I just put that. Okay. Is everyone seeing that? Okay.
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So just to start, it's really good. I love those questions. Really great to get some feedback in terms of what people have done and what you guys are experiencing. And I think one of the most notable things that someone said is it's a very new field. You know, there's a very pioneering space. That's why I think it's so exciting, because we're learning so much so quickly. So what I'm going to present to you today is very much my personal experience as well as the people that I've worked with. But, you know, like I said, it's exciting because it's new. So this is by no means the final product. It's very much a work in progress. So just in terms of starting off with some key ideas. So I started ceremonies maybe about 10 years ago or so, and we used to take really big doses in ceremonies. And what I noticed was there was so much that we could get from those big doses. But there was always a beginning, a middle, and an end. So you always came out of ceremony. And that was really interesting to me because similar to meditation, you know, I'd also been meditating for some time as well. And it was the same kind of thing. I used to sit down in meditation and I used to have kind of like a beginning of meditation where you kind of just getting used to be uncomfortable. You know, there's like lots of stuff happening in the body or lots of thoughts happening in the mind. So, you know, there was that beginning experience of meditation where there was usually discomfort, and then moving into a middle kind of storyline where there was perhaps some insight or some rest or some release or however your meditation went. And then there was a closing, an end point to the meditation. But then I would come out of meditation. So it would always be that experience of going into something and then coming out of something. And same with ceremony, you know, we'd go into ceremony, we'd go through a process and then come out of ceremony. And then when we're out of ceremony, it kind of feels like, oh, I'm out of ceremony now. And that kind of felt like it's like we were in the work and then we were out of the work and it's like, oh, great, I can relax now or whatever, you know, we're outside of that container. And while that's true, obviously there's a huge use to have that container and to have that utility of being in ceremony. I think one of the main ideas I want to present to you today is I think the power of microdosing is about us continuing that thread of ceremony so we don't have to have this feeling of being out so much. We can somehow continue this experience of staying in, whether that's meditation or ceremony. And the interesting thing with meditation is there's very much new movements in the meditation spaces where one example is people are being encouraged to keep their eyes open, which is really interesting because for many of the traditions, it's like your eyes are closed and you go inside. But now all of a sudden it's like you can meditate, and that's long been the Zen practice, but it's becoming more popular these days now to meditate with your eyes open. And that to me speaks to the same point. It's kind of like, okay, if I'm meditating with my eyes open, is there a way that I can continue that meditation while I'm being in my everyday life, while I'm doing ordinary things or having conversations? There's a beautiful Zen monk who calls it leaving the back door open. So, you know, obviously you're still in the relatedness of life, but you've kept the back door open. So in some way that you're connecting to this spacious awareness and this feeling that you get in meditation, as well as being able to concentrate and function in the world. And that's, again, like my key point here, this whole talk, is that's why I'm so excited about microdosing, is because I think it shows us the way in quite an effective manner. So I think it's a technology we can use to really learn how to do that in a very real way. So that's pretty much what I think the main idea that comes from that is that pretty much what we learn is we feel better when we're doing one thing at a time. And one thing at a time might be, you know, like doing some piece of work, or it might be, you know, picking up the phone and talking to someone, or whatever that one thing is. But I think we've started to move into this culture where there's this myth of multitasking. And I'm sure most of you guys know by now that multitasking doesn't actually exist. There's no such thing as multitasking. There's switching of attention, which is very ineffective. So when we do one thing at a time, we actually get more productive. We get more focused and we actually feel better about our day. So that one thing as well is usually when we're microdosing, or for me, my personal feeling with it is, one of the first things I do is I go, where's the sun? You know, like I orient myself to the sun. It's such a natural response for me. So that feeling of resourcing, where's the sun? How am I breathing? Just being kind of present with myself. And I think, you know, that speaks to another key idea of why we might want to take up a practice like this, because it really puts us in touch with those obvious movements. Where's the earth? Where's the ground? How does it feel when my feet touch the ground? So how does it, connecting with the elements, all those kinds of things. So yeah, so basically those are the key ideas. And what I'll also present in this talk is just a few other reasons why you might want to think about microdosing if you haven't tried already. So yeah, and just as I go on, I'd really very much open for this to be very interactive. So if anyone's got questions or wants to stop me at any point, then please do so. So because, yeah, you might have gathered, I really love the idea of Zen and I love meditation. I'd like to just start this talk with a Zen koan that I really found recently that I really am enjoying. And I think it works, it fits quite nicely in this plant medicine space, whether you're doing macro or micro, or, you know, whatever your dosing is at the moment. So the Zen koan basically is not for you to work out in your head. It's for you to put in the back of your mind and just let it sit in the back of your mind. There's no rush to come to any insight, and see how this koan, it's something that you can take with you if you resonate with it, and you just see what unfolds, if anything. So how it goes is it's medicine and disease subdue each other. The whole earth is medicine. Where is your real self? So I'll say that again. Medicine and disease subdue each other. The whole earth is medicine. Where is your real self? So it's something that you can just play with if you feel to. And it's coming to this idea for me. One of the things that it speaks to is that really this whole world is medicine. Everything belongs. Everything belongs. There's nothing that can be excluded. It's all part of what we are, who we are. So one of the things that koan opens in me is to invite in this medicine. Invite whatever that medicine is, whatever's coming up in the world, to somehow find a place of including it, whether that's a difficult relationship or it's something, an inner experience that's difficult, or some judgment about some politician, or a hatred of Trump, or, you know, whatever whatever comes up, it's this idea that everything can be included, everything's got a place. And this is another idea that I think is very integral in any microdosing practice, is really connecting with it's actually a family constellations idea as well, that the biggest sicknesses in this world are caused by exclusion, by people in families, by people in communities, by people in any kinds of spaces being excluded by the group. It's one of the deepest wounds we can cause other people. And you might check that for yourself. What does it feel like when you were last excluded, if that's a recent experience? And most of the time when you feel in your body the feeling of being excluded or having been pushed out of a group, it's almost like one of the worst things we can experience. So our job, in my opinion, in terms of kind of establishing a practice like this, is to start getting into the habit of including again, of really getting into relationship with your life as it is, and including and welcoming as much as possible. And that doesn't mean that we don't have boundaries. It's really important to obviously still have boundaries, but inclusion is a different kind of subject altogether. It's not about the boundaries. It's about our hearts and the space in our hearts to be, in a way, compassionate, humble, and really understanding that everything we see, the whole of life, it's all who we are. So I'm going to just leave that koan there. Hopefully you guys have got it by now. And then we can't really talk about microdosing or anything on this subject without saying something about the default mode network. So I'm sure many of you guys have heard of this term. It's quite a popular term. It's kind of recent research in neuroscience, and what the research is showing us is that we've got kind of a recent part of our brain and kind of evolutionary history that has developed around ourself. So it's a part of the brain that carries stories, they say. This is what the research shows. It's kind of the autobiographical self. It's the part of the brain that carries emotion and stories about who we are. So when we are, when the default mode of the brain is very active, then what happens is we've very much identified with this little self in our heads, wherever you see that experience of me, that experience of my small self. And for most of us, it's somewhere kind of in the middle of our heads. We have this feeling of if we had to locate ourselves, that's where it would be. So the default mode network carries those stories. It carries those stories about who we think we are. And one of the Psilocybin studies that have been done has shown that when we take psychedelics like Psilocybin, the default mode relaxes. And that's quite a big thing, because what that's telling us is that our identification with who we think we are relaxes. It comes to a place where we're not so attached to those stories. And, that might sound like, well, why should I care so much about that? Well, it's a really big deal, because if we're not so connected to our stories and so attached to who we think we are, there's space for more malleability. We can start to, in a way, reshape or reimagine some of the stories that aren't working for us, or some of the stories that hold us back, or some of the stories that are just not even close to true, but that we've bought into. So you can see these two pictures here. The one on the right is the study under the psilocybin. The left image is the placebo. So the psilocybin on the right, and that's just showing how much more neural connectivity, connections there are under psilocybin. Our brains really rewriting, refiring, reconnecting. So it's a very colorful picture, and it just speaks to the fact that there's huge utility, whether you microdose or macrodose, just in quietening this area of the brain, so that we can really probe into what it is, who we are, and what kind of stories we want to tell about ourselves. Because very often what we find is that the stories that we've been telling aren't even our stories. They've come from our parents and our parents' parents, and we have just taken them on board in a very unconscious way, out of loyalty to our family, or their stories from our society. So many of these stories don't resonate so much with our hearts anymore. They don't resonate with our souls anymore. And I think one of the biggest things that psychedelics can do for us is give us this opening to re-look at those stories. And in a way, we can reshape our destinies. We can reshape who we are. We can reshape what our purpose is, just with this opportunity. So what this basically little quote says is just that when we're doing micro and macrodosing, one of the biggest advantages is that this ego dissolution can happen. It's not that we need to get rid of the ego, but it's just that the identification with the ego starts to relax a little bit, so that we can really get this opportunity to release. We're not so tight up. Like the way I feel about it is like if I had to hold a fist, maybe you guys can do that. Just hold like a fist, and then just feel what that fist feels like when you maybe want to just make it really tense for a moment. And that's a little bit about how the experience of our ego is. It's super contracted. It keeps us really, really limited. And when you're ready, just let it go. And that letting it go is, to me, really the big benefit of these kinds of experiences, is that we see that that's actually what we want. Not to get rid of the ego, because we need the ego to remain functional and productive and in relationship to life. But if we're so tightly held, if we're so constricted, then we get very little chance to get out of this narrow track. We don't see a bigger picture. We just see the patterns, and we keep playing those patterns. So to me, the big question is, how do we start interrupting those patterns so that we get different choices? Because for all of us, they're usually very unconscious. We don't see them very easily, and they tend to run a lot of our lives. So, like I said, to me, the biggest piece of interest I have in this is like, okay, if a pattern comes up for me, how can I get more creative with that pattern without going to war with it, without making the pattern wrong, without condemning it in some way and saying it shouldn't be there? How can I see the pattern for what it is and start like getting more creative, using that energy and finding new ways? And I think this is the power of microdosing. So I love this, again, just to keep on the theme of psychedelics. I love this, what Tim Ferriss, I'm sure many of you guys know Tim Ferriss. He's got a beautiful podcast where he interviews amazing people. And what he said about psychedelics the other day, I thought was just really great. He said that psychedelics, they heat up the mold, they heat up the clay in our brains. So it's like our brains become more malleable. So we can start to mold them, to shape them. So it's like, so he called it like the clay in our minds. We heat up with the psychedelics, we can heat up that clay. And once the clay is hot, we can start playing with it. But then the question is, okay, so you've heated up the clay and it's ready now, but what do you do with that? How are you going to reshape that? How are you going to remold that? And I think that's where we have to think about our intentions, and we have to be quite careful as well, because we want to make sure that we've got the right intentions, we've got the right consciousness when we are remolding this clay. Otherwise, we could do some damage. So that's why I think the practice part of this is really, really important. The practice part is, in my opinion, how we meet the medicines halfway. So instead of just taking the medicines and expecting them to do their work on us, the practice part is about saying, okay, I'm going to meet the medicines. I'm going to find a way where I can bring my practice, bring my intentions, and meet the medicines so that we're working together, rather than sitting back saying, do what you need to do. So for me, the most important part of the practice is to have a practice that is established in the body. So a body-based practice. We want to be more in our bodies, especially when we're microdosing. So a practice, what we do as part of our microdosing programs is the central part of it is something that I call a glimpse. And a glimpse is an idea that comes from a guy called Locke Kelly. He's got a really beautiful book, excuse me, if you guys want to look it up. It's a book called Effortless Mindfulness. It's a really great book. And one of the key ideas that he talks about is glimpsing. And glimpsing is so super cool because it plays to that same idea that we don't have to be in meditation then out of meditation. He's saying to us that it's better to be meditating more frequently throughout our day rather than having bigger sittings and then going on with our day. Not that bigger sittings are kind of like counterproductive. It's just that there are also other ways to do this. So what he says is that glimpsing is like a mini meditation. And you doing that more frequently in your day wakes you up to some of those patterns that you might otherwise be asleep to. So that's why it's really important to really reflect on this idea. What if I just took a few minutes and I committed to, say, 5 to 7 times a day, just to take a time out, pay attention, see what's happening in the body. So that means allowing the sensation in the body, creating a holding space for the emotion. So whatever emotion is there, just allowing the emotion to be there. And the same thing is for thoughts, just allowing the mind to be like it is. So that's the essence of glimpsing, is just to stop. And it's a good thing to do this wherever you are. So you can do this at work, you can do this when in any situation, in the car. It's just reminding yourself to bring your attention back and bring it back to the body, to unhook from the mind. So you unhook, just drop the attention and you just let your attention settle in the body. And you only need to do that for a few minutes at a time, 1 minute even, 2 minutes. You don't need to do a long glimpse, just a short glimpse. But it's building this habit of attention. So if I had to ask you guys, to move your attention now, you could move your attention, if I said to you, move your attention to the other side of the wall, or you could move it to the ceiling. So I'm actually just inviting you now just to do this. So move it to an object in front of you. Move it to the wall behind you. And so what you see is that we have complete control over our attention. We can move our attention wherever. So now put your attention on the back, on the back side of your hand. So on the top of your hand, just rest your attention there. And now on the palm of your hand. And now move your attention to inside your index finger. And then just keep it inside your index finger, just for a moment. And then just notice what sensations are there. So for most people, it'll be a little bit neutral, might be slightly pleasant, but there's not much happening in our index finger. So now bring your attention to your head. So your attention is in your head. And for most of us, this is kind of quite a familiar place. We know what it feels like for our attention to be in the head space. But just stay here for a moment and just be aware of what it feels like to be in your head. And then just remember to keep breathing as well. So now what I want you to do is just to unhook your attention from your head and let your attention drop down, so down through your neck, and just let it drop down into your chest. And it's not to say that you have to stop thinking. You don't have to, we can never stop thinking. You don't have to stop thinking. But just let your attention drop down into your chest. And knowing your chest directly, so not looking up to the head to get an idea of what's happening to the chest, but being in that chest area in a direct way. So all we do is we move our attention to the chest and we just stay there for a moment. And then just notice, for most of us, there's quite a lot happening in the chest. So just notice how the chest feels, the sensations, not the emotions, but the raw sensations. So it might be tight, constricted, might be heavy, might be light, might be open. Could be many, many things. It could be feeling the diaphragm. You might have some tightness. But just see if you can allow it for a moment to be like it is. No change. Just breathe with it. And then just drop a little further so you can let go of the chest, and then just drop into the belly, the last part of the body. And then again, just being with the belly, however the belly feels. And just keep breathing. So you can let go of the belly, and then just have an awareness of your whole body, just the whole field of your body. Just being aware of how the body feels. And again, just welcoming that. No need to change it. You might feel heavy, you might feel tired, you might feel anxious, you might feel elated, you might feel excited. But again, we're just welcoming, coming back to that idea of including whatever's there. And then just connecting with the breath again. And as I continue with the talk, I would just invite you to see if you can maintain your awareness, your attention in the body. So keeping some attention in the body. Feeling rooted. So it's really important to have that sense of the chair underneath you. It's amazing how gravity holds us down like it does. Really, we are really connected to this earth. Not much we can do about that. So just trying to stay in the body as best you can, and then feeling the root, feeling the earth underneath us. And then I'm going to continue with the presentation. But again, I've arrived at my main point, really, which is that all this work happens for me in the body, everything. So we feel our emotions in the body. Our nervous system is completely reflected in our bodies. Everything's in the body. All the sensations we experience, it's in the body. The thoughts that we think, it's in our bodies. So it's really important when we practice to be very connected with our bodies and to be very much in a place of listening to our bodies. And that's, again, what I think microdosing really helps us with, because one of the first things when I microdose, one of the first things that happens to me is I'll usually go, oh my God, I need water. I'm thirsty. Or look, at my breath is really short. This doesn't feel so good. Or I'll be feeling like, oh my gosh, I really need some sun. So again, that's connected with the body. Our body tells us what we need. And when we connected and listening, we follow those movements. So yeah, basically my point here is that the practice elements and the intention elements are really important for microdosing. Because if you're just going to go into this without any intention or without any kind of practice, then I think the results will be, mixed. You might get lucky and you pick something up, but I think it's really important to have a good intention and to have some sense of what your practice is going to look like. So yeah, what I've mentioned now is just some of the practices that you can use. So the glimpsing is one that I would definitely recommend. Writing is another part of the practice I think is essential, to have a journal and just to be able to pick a time in the day where you just write something. You might want to start with how I'm feeling is, what's happening is, and you give yourself full permission to write in a way that's, your journal knows everything. You don't have to over-explain. You just write whatever feels like it's in you, just to get it out. That I think is an invaluable practice to use with this microdosing. So anyway, one thing I've left out is, well, what is microdosing? So microdosing, I'm sure many of you will know this, but I'll just say, I'll kind of give you a sense of what I think microdosing is. It's taking sub-perceptual doses of psychedelics, and you guys have mentioned a whole bunch. There's so many ways to microdose. I by no means know all of them. I've experimented with a few, but essentially it's taking 1/10 or 1/15 of what a full dose would be. And the result of that for most people is a shift in awareness. So what we tend to get is this sense of a bit more spaciousness. We tend to get more connected with ourselves. So for me, what usually comes up is I usually feel like, much more aware of my body, much more aware of my surroundings. So it's very subtle for most people. And I think that's an important point, is that we're not talking about totally obvious movements. It's not like a macrodose in any way. Although for some people who are really sensitive, it can be. But it's a very subtle practice, and the shifts are, one example of this is a book called A Really Good Day. It's a microdosing book, which again, I'd recommend you read if you're interested in the subject. The author's Ayala, I can't remember her surname, but I can find it. But anyway, what she said is that she knew that she was microdosing, and she was microdosing LSD. And what she said is that she knew she was microdosing because she looked outside her office and she noticed a tree, she noticed the leaves, and it wasn't anything super huge. She just noticed, and she recognized in that noticing that she was present. she was just with the ordinariness of that moment, and she was just being present, and she noticed the wind, and it had this effect on her system where she felt like, wow, that feels really good. That feels really good just to be here, just to be here in a very simple way. And another story that I'd like to share on that same note is that when I was in Brazil doing a vision quest, we were with the chief there, and he was telling us a story about the vision quest. What we do is we go up the mountain for 4 days and 4 nights, and we basically don't have any food, don't have any water, and in an enclosed space, and it's just you and you, that's it. And it's called a vision. I'm sure many of you know about the vision quest. It's called a vision quest. So many of us go there looking for a vision, like we go, well, I'm sure a vision is going to come sometime. So I'm looking for one. And it's just you. So there's kind of this feeling that, there must be a big point to this. And this chief kind of was just talking around the fire. And he was saying that one guy had recently gone up and he'd come back down, and he said to the chief, he said, I didn't see a vision. I had no vision, nothing. What happened? What was that about? I spent 4 days, 4 nights, and there was no vision. And the chief just looked at him, and he just was just smiling and actually just laughing with him and saying, but the vision was always there. The vision was that ordinary moment all the time. There was no need to wait for anything. We weren't waiting for this big epiphany. Although that can happen, he wasn't saying you can't have an epiphany, but the real gift is in the ordinary, simple moment. And that I think again speaks to this idea of microdosing, in that we're looking to bring more of what we would consider sacred into everyday, ordinary life, in a way that's just very simple. So the next part of my presentation is just to share with you guys some stories and some anecdotes that we've had from people who've done our groups. But before I do that, what I'd really like to do is just open up a space for questions or comments or anything that you guys have to say or comment on. I'm just going to change my lighting as well, so just going to give me a moment.
So if anyone wants to unmute themselves, just press the space bar, and it's nice if you guys are able to come on video, because then we can see you raise your hand. That way we don't have people speaking over each other.
Just this very bright.
Fran, you've got a question. Go for it. Fran?
Oh, hi, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Oh, sorry, it was a bit out. I just wanted to say I really liked that part that you said about the ego, how trying to get rid of the identification with the ego. Because lately I've been struggling with the ego, and I've had this whole realization with the ego. And I think microdosing really helps you with that. And the effect of that is you get rid of anxiety and depression. That's been my experience. I think that ego theme, I think people underestimate how much that affects your life, your ego. Yeah. Thanks. It's really interesting.
Thank you, Fran. Good, really nice points.
Anybody else?
Serious challenges. Oh, okay.
Maybe something I'd like to share is, I really resonate, Ryan, so much with that feeling of increased presence and noticing, and also just the subtleties. But the one thing that I I immediately notice is just how the quality of my dreams immediately improves. You know, I suddenly start dreaming, and you know, I'm not someone that necessarily microdoses every day, but you know, just from a single microdose, like I can feel the impact, you know, for weeks afterwards, and just the quality of something shifting and noticing. And you know, I think that you know, one of the big misconceptions is that we think there's going to be something really dramatic, and it's more about the richness and the quality of presence that we miss, and you know, that's really what I loved about the topic of your talk. You know, life being the ceremony. And I hope that you speak more about that, because that's very much been, you know, my experience, you know, working with microdosing, is the extended ceremony aspect, you know, going through those motions during an extended microdosing protocol.
Beautiful. Thank you, Lana. Yeah. So, anyone else want to say anything? We're good. Yeah, I mean, that to me really is the point here. It's exactly what you were saying now, Lana, is the real challenge is making life the ceremony, you know, making everyday life the ceremony, so that it's not to say that we don't need other ceremonies, we don't need places that we can go to release or to find insight, or you know, those kinds of concentrated ceremonies, but for this realization that the whole of life is a ceremony. And I think that's part of the reason why I introduced that koan right at the beginning, because I think that gives us a bit of a clue into how we can make that happen, how we can come into this experience that life is a ceremony. And for us to be able to do that, I think what we need to do is recognize the places in us where we think it's not a ceremony. And usually those places tell us something about how we are arguing with life, how we are in a battle with life, how we disagree with something, or we think that it should be some other way. What I notice is that as much as I'm in alignment with how things are and with how things have been in my ancestry in the past, with my own past, it's easier for me to be in a place of acceptance, because I think that's what we're talking about here when we're talking about life as a ceremony. We have to let the ego relax, or get used to letting the ego be in a more relaxed place, not so tense. But this is not the way I see it or feel it. It's not about some perfect art. It's not like we have to get to a place where life is always a ceremony and we always have that sacredness. Because I think losing it and being kicked out of the ceremony is just as much a part of it. So I think we have to be able to hold this paradox. Sorry, yeah. Alana, you got your hand up.
Yes, Ryan, I'm just raising my hand for Jared, who doesn't have a camera. I just see that he made a comment in chat, and he just wanted to ask if he could ask a question or say something. So I just wanted to alert you to that. So Jared, would you like to speak?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, that's great. Hey guys. I just wanted to add, I've really been enjoying what you've been saying about about being present and being in that present consciousness. But I find there's a space just beyond that where I like to call it super consciousness, where you become just so completely conscious and aware of just everything. And I found the microdosing really helped me to become incredibly conscious over my own thoughts and the information that I'd gathered through a lifetime, and the ability to completely reprogram and restructure the mind. so that it can be completely conscious in every waking moment, even without the microdosing. I mean, obviously, it's just a crutch for a certain amount of time until you learn how to walk on your own 2 feet. But that's what I found most interesting about microdosing, as well as the macrodosing. I just wanted to add that.
Thank
Beautiful.
you.
And that's it.
Thank you. Okay. So, yeah, so just getting back to that point, this is my feeling, my opinion, but I think it's a super ego trick to try to think that we have to attain some level of perfection. It just keeps us caught in the same kind of wheel of suffering. So my feeling is that even when we're not in that space of life being a ceremony, it's okay too. We don't have to aim for this place of, perfection. We don't have to try to be 100% conscious 100% of the time. I think that's really, really some kind of idea that can trip us up even more. So I don't think it's a useful idea, because I think we need to bring kindness to all the places of ourselves. So we have to be willing to be kind to ourselves, even when we are totally unconscious, when we've completely lost the plot, and we wake up and we're like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? And we bring our attention back as best we can to our practice. So for me, this is more about making more of our lives a ceremony, rather than trying to aim for all of our lives being a ceremony. Just wherever we're at, it's acknowledging, for me, it's like acknowledging your condition. So it always starts with acceptance. So when I'm doing a little glimpse, I'm always starting with that sense of acceptance. And then from there, it's just moving with whatever's there. And I think that's really the power of microdosing, is that it makes it very clear what's here right now, in terms of what I was talking about just now in the body, the sensations, the emotions, the mind. It's all very clear, much more than it usually would be. So it gives us this opportunity to see what we're running away from, what we're trying to get away from. It gives us this interesting opportunity to get more intimate with our defenses, which are very unconscious. Our defenses are, and anyone who says that they've somehow transformed all their defenses and now they are this supreme being, I would be very skeptical. I really don't think that that's something that happens very often. And I think that, I'm sure there are incredible beings out there that are completely transformed, but for most of us, that's not really gritty enough. It's not really real enough. And I think this practice is about getting really real. And that's about owning the worst in us and the best in us. So, these little glimpses, these little moments, or big glimpses, as is the case for, when we have big glimpses, but it's just about meeting ourselves and realizing. I mean, Joseph Campbell said, he said that the gods are envious of us. They're envious of us because of our imperfections. It's the imperfections that make us beautiful. So we don't have to try and be these perfect beings. We just have to be ourselves with everything, with all our flaws, with all our insecurities, with everything. And of course, there's some things in there that we can evolve and we can grow. That's, again, now we're talking about the ego self. There's lots we can grow in the ego self. Of course, that's part of, I think, why we're here. We want to become better people. But there's a way that we can go about doing that doesn't condemn the ego. It doesn't make the ego this bad thing that, blames it for whatever it's doing. It's, again, bringing this idea of kindness, just kindness to ourselves and kindness to the world. And if anything, I think what gives us the best possible chance of experiencing life as a ceremony, every day as a ceremony, with the microdosing or without the microdosing, is cultivating a practice of kindness, meeting ourselves in a kind way, meeting other people in a kind way. And that means even meeting our critic in a kind way, because we have to recognize that that's something. I don't know anyone who hasn't got a critic. Some of us have got a stronger critic, but our critics criticize us about different things. according to our personality. So whatever your personality is, you're going to have a critic that goes along with that personality and tells you what you are doing or what you're not doing right. So even that critic needs kindness. We have to understand the context where it comes from. Back to that same idea in the beginning, everything belongs. And it's not to say that, again, you can't get better, you can't develop, you can't relax the critic, but it's first about acknowledging. So for me, the idea of life as a ceremony is about acknowledging ourselves, our condition, and waking up in the life that we're in right now, and waking up to our resistance, how we resist the life, all our resentments. And that requires being very real and very honest with yourself, so that we can make some traction. And that also means, and this is really important, our teachers in the UK, Yaakov Darling Carney, wrote a beautiful book called Jaguar in the Body, Butterfly in the Heart. I'd also recommend that you go check that out. But he calls it the unbroken, that we have to connect with what's unbroken and always unbroken in us, around us. Our true nature, you could say. Without connecting with the unbroken, it's not possible to really do any work on this kind of relative ego self, this limited self. So that's perhaps our biggest resource, is knowing what we are and being able to have a connection, have an experience, being able to keep the back door open, so to speak. So we are starting to relax back into an identity that's beyond this limited small self, but also includes it. So the unbroken, I think, is a very important idea. What you might ask yourself, what in you is unbroken? Another way to do this is to use this question, which I think is a very useful question, pointing to what our nature is. So the question is, what is here when there's no problem to solve? What is here when there's no problem to solve? So if you ask yourself that question, you take a moment sometime and you just ask yourself that question. It's not to say that the problem solving, which is really the ego, our ego is the problem solver, usually looking for something to solve, but it's just stretching beyond that. What's here when there's no problem to solve? So that again can help us get connected with the unbroken part, so that when we look back, there's enough spaciousness to hold whatever it is we're going through, because our limited selves can't actually hold our pain. It's just not possible. The system is not wired for it. So what I'm going to do now is just quickly run through some of the stories and some of the research that we did. Like I said, it's very informal, so there's nothing here that goes too deep. Most of it's just anecdotal. But I think it'll paint a picture of the kinds of experiences people are having, and I'm sure some of you will resonate with this. And then we can do some questions afterwards. Sorry. So basically this was in 2019. That was last year. We took a group of 40 people through a microdosing program. And we've been running those programs for about 2 years now. This program was a San Pedro program. So everyone was on San Pedro. The one problem with it is we had 21 days on San Pedro. And at that point, I didn't really realize how important the breaks were. So people were on 21 days straight with homeopathic doses of San Pedro. Not everyone, but a lot of people were. So that was one thing that we learned from that program, was that it's really important to break it. So to have cycles, which we can talk about as well. But basically, I think we had 14 out of those 40 people that completed some surveys. And we asked them a whole bunch of questions. And these are some of the answers that came back from those surveys. So I just kind of themed them. So the first category is just about sensitivity, and this is the most obvious one. So when you're microdosing, these are the kinds of things people said right off the bat. So the first one, as you can see, the expansive sensations, more solid, more connected, more conscious, kind of glimpsing deeper into myself. So speaking to that theme of just being more awake to yourself and seeing more of what's happening. And also what we got as well a lot of is just this amazement to how asleep we can get, how we have this capacity to push so much away and just to continue on, you know, regardless. It's an incredible, I think it's an incredible capacity we've developed. Maybe not so useful, but amazing how we've developed it. So this one participant spoke about the speed, how quickly things came up, recognize and be aware of things that I may not, that I may not normally see or be aware of. So this heightened sensitivity is, for me, just about tuning in. And it's one of the first things that I notice with the microdosing for most people, is that we just tune in a little bit more. We as much kind of aware of what's happening outside. So we don't lose functionality, we're still functional. But we just, like I said just now in that practice, our attention is still in our body a little bit. We're still very much connected to what's happening inside us. Hold on. So then the next category was semantic awareness. So, and it just follows through from that sensitivity, is that most of people's experiences started with the body. So it seems as if one of the first things that tends to happen for people is this idea of inhabiting your own skin. So instead of being caught up in our minds and our heads and our stories, we start to actually just like, okay, my God, this is what it feels like to be in my skin. You know, there's some things that feel good, there's some things that don't feel good, but this is what it feels like. So people getting more into their bodies, and also in doing so, being more tuned in with what their bodies need. So that one person said there more clearly what foods I need or I don't need. The other person said, this was quite funny, and it's very characteristic of San Pedro, because San Pedro wants to make us move. This one was discovered that my body didn't enjoy just laying about. It needed to move. And I think that's such a good point, is that we are, you know, again, speaking about our teachers in the UK, they movement medicine teachers, they teach us how to move. And one of the things that they say is that we're born to dance. We're born to move. Like, we've just got conditioned not to do so. But there's an intelligence inside that always moves us, can always move us. So how we get to a point where we don't move in ways that our body is telling us to, is usually about our conditioning. It's usually about the habits that we've formed based on where we've grown up and where we've come from. So again, noticing, releasing of stiffness, you know, celebrating, eating raw vegetables, colors. So obviously noticing the colors of the food that you're eating. I like that first point as well. I actually spoke to that person afterwards, and I was quite amazed because I hadn't ever heard anything like that before. But she had very cold hands, and what she said is that she had a lot of warmth that came back to her in her hands and feet. So her circulation improved, and that was with San Pedro. So yeah, you can see by some of those quotes there that, you know, this experience of just feeling what the body feels like and following those needs. And again, speaking to the idea how easy it is to be out of touch with the needs of the body and to be moving in a different direction. So relationships. This was another one that I think is, sorry about that last bullet, but this is another one that I think was really important. If we think of relationships really as our life, you know, relationship with ourselves, with other people, relationship with our communities, relationship with our ancestors, relationship with spirits, you know, relationship is really our life. So, and this was limited feedback. I have more on relationships, but we got a lot of good feedback from relationships. People feeling better in their relationships, feeling more belonging in themselves. Like this first quote, checking in rather than checking out. This other person said, was nice to people. I mean, it sounds kind of a good thing to do, just to be pleasant, to be nice to people, in a good mood. So being in this, it makes us feel better. The more we have a good relationship with ourselves and people around us, we feel better. So it became softer, listen more, more patient, more balanced. letting go of control. So all these themes kind of speaking to this idea of how we can be in good relationship. The energy and productivity was quite an interesting one too, because at that stage I wasn't sure that people would be more productive or more functional. I wasn't clear how it was going to work, but for most people, this is 14 people. Most people were more productive, and I'll show you before we do this slide. You can see there. How would you best describe the energetic effects of the medicine, and what would you describe as your productivity level? So you can see there that at least half said I did more than I usually would in more creative ways. So the red at the bottom there is just similar, so no difference. The blue is a very small minority that said they battled to concentrate, but that can definitely happen. Maybe if you take too much of the medicine, and then the green is more productive. So we had a few people that said they were significantly more productive, with improvements in creativity, innovation, and problem solving. If you see the energetic effects, it's a similar kind of result. So most people more sustained energy, and then there were some who had quite a lot more, and some kind of who felt it fluctuated too much. That can happen with the San Pedro, in my experience, is that it is quite easy to take too much, and you can get to a place where you can feel a little uncomfortable, like you can feel a bit wiry, like you've taken too much. So that again just highlights the importance of doing break days. So finding a cycle, a rhythm that works for you, and then doing a couple of break days a week. So just back to the productivity, you can see a few quotes here. Quality of my productivity heightened. One person said you're much more productive, more focused on the task, staying with it. Less stress and anxiety, and as a result of a diminished stress and anxiety, a natural productivity, approaching tasks from a different point of view, different perspective. My focus was more inward, so I was more quieter than usual, and also being able to prioritize. So for me, the thing that I get from focus and the kind of productive side of it is that I tend to see where I'm wasting my time and energy. I tend to see where I'm being distracted. And I think that's quite useful as well, because then you can just bring yourself back. Or I can also recognize if I'm being distracted, maybe there's something that I need that I'm not giving myself. Maybe I need to take a break. Maybe I need to get some water. Maybe I need to sit in the sun. Maybe I need to... So again, that's why in our programs we do a lot of resourcing, because the resourcing is essential to be able to kind of bring this into your everyday life. So knowing what supports you, knowing what you can draw from to keep your nervous system nourished and calm and in a good way. So that's the productivity, that's the energetic. Definitely emotional awareness. So people we've had this, maybe this is one of the most obvious points, is that one of the first things people become aware of is definitely their emotional state, which I think is hugely valuable, because if you're aware of your emotional state and you're also tuned into other people, immediately there you're going to be better in your relationships. You're going to very likely be less reactive. You're going to be in a place where you're actually listening, and you're actually being present with someone, not a spiritual presence, but a kind of a real presence. So it's kind of like, wow, it's interesting. This is me here. I'm actually interested in this other person. So just connecting to our emotions and also being able to read other people and make those adjustments. So people also said manage to come difficult emotions, or emotions that surfaced, and she also felt, or this person felt, very supported. So as much as it's challenging, in some ways you also feel supported, so that you can process what comes up, or you can just be with what comes up. So usually it's not overwhelming if we don't resist it. If we don't, it's usually only overwhelming, I'm sure, like most of you have experienced, when we resist it. If we bring that same kind of tension, and we have that space in us where we can welcome, where we're not going to get into a place of being in battle with anything, just being able to embrace it and include it and not resist it, then we move through it. It's, to me, that simple. You know, it might take some time, but usually we move through it. We've had people taking San Pedro where literally they have constellated themselves. I don't want to go too much into family constellations, but that's a lot about your family field. And we've had people taking doses of San Pedro and just being in nature, and they actually constellate a family issue, and the whole energetic of it shifted just by them paying attention to the emotions, the story, and somehow something gets processed. So I think it's a very powerful idea to bring our attention to these places in us that are really calling for it. And they really are calling for it. We just got into the habit of ignoring those calls. So this just kind of turns our attention around. So we're looking back at ourselves and paying attention to what we need to. So the emotional aspect was really important. And then, yeah, that was my last slide. So before I end, if anyone does want to contact me, those are my details while I'm just finished off the talk. But I think the main point I'd like to make, you know, in terms of having taken people through and going through this myself for some time now, is that there's definitely obviously still a place for ceremony. I'm not in any way trying to promote no ceremony. It's just that I think that we, in the West, we've got this culture of trying to make things big, and we've got a very competitive mindset. So I think that gets taken into ceremony as well sometimes, where we're trying to take big doses and we're trying to do a lot of work and go really deep. And sometimes that's called for. I mean, sometimes there's a place to just take time out and go really deep. But I think more often than not, we overlook the value of taking small steps, because small steps are really usually sustainable steps. And small, ordinary steps, coming back to the idea of the vision quest, not looking for this big vision, but just this idea that whether it's deep or shallow, there's, from another place, it doesn't matter. Deep or shallow is just another polarity. Big or small, it's just another polarity. And in the West, I think we're just so used to kind of being driven to as big, as fast, as whatever we can get. So I think it's very valuable to explore the subtleties, which is everything that microdosing is about. It's about the subtleties, and it demands more of our attention. It demands more practice. It demands more of us bringing ourselves to the medicine and not relying so much on these really big doses, but starting to get used to the idea, like Jared was saying, that the medicine is us. These plant medicines are just here to show us what we are, who we are. So, you know, if we are just doing plant medicines, then I think, you know, maybe we need to look at other things, taking breaks, you know, not doing them for a while. So I think that's why I feel so supportive of the microdosing regime or protocols, because I think it gives us that opportunity to just lighten the load a little bit. You know, just look at this whole plant medicine space from a place of like sobriety, being sober, but with the little bits of plant medicine, just to give us that little shift, just enough, so that we can go, oh, wow, okay, interesting. So that is pretty much me for now, and I will open up to questions if you guys have any.
Thank you, Ryan. Maybe we can, maybe we can just stop the screen share, and then we can get everybody.
Yes.
There we go. Awesome. Awesome. Well, if anybody wants, should we give it a bash again? I'm just going to stick it into chat because I think it's going to work this time. I'm really hopeful, because I've got a nice way that we can actually capture all of our questions, and I've got some questions for you. So let's try menti.com and and just type in 5436108. So menti.com 5436108. And the reason I'm wanting to use it is because the type of data that Ryan's been generating, it should generate that kind of data for us instantly. And that's the point of this. So let's see if that works. So if you go to menti.com, and are you able to capture your questions? Can everybody see that? Are you able to capture your questions? Is that a thumbs up? A yes? Is it allowing you to? So on, and if you can't go into Mentimeter, you can type them here, but I'm just wanting to see, is anyone having success? Are there any affirmatives? Yay! Working for you, Ryan?
No.
Oh wait, it is working. I'm getting the questions. They're coming up. I've got one question. It's starting to show, and you should, as you type them, you can also like other people's questions. So we can get an idea in terms of the interest of the group as to, you know, what questions you guys like. You can scroll up and down. So we've got 2 questions so far. What's the difference in felt experience between microdosing mushrooms versus San Pedro? Where's a good place to get the best microdosing meds? Okay. All right, so I'm going to give you just another minute to finish capturing your questions.
Hi, Elena. Are we allowed to also ask questions by speaking?
Yes, you can do that while everyone's typing. If you can't work on Mentimeter, go for it.
All right, thank you. I think my question is a bit open-ended, but yeah, first of all, I have to thank you, Elena, for making this possible. I think it's a very great initiative. And Ryan, thank you so much for your wisdom and just for your presentation. It really kind of like brought some point home. And also everyone else for all the questions. I think that every time someone asks a question, it opens my own awareness. Ryan, the first question I had is pretty much in regards to continuity. My experience have felt that, okay, I'm microdosing, I'm feeling great. And then once I'm done, everything is done. I feel like I'm just back to normal. And so I guess the question is, in your experience and knowledge, do people take it and then that's it, they change forever, or there's a certain repetition that you need to do? Because for me, it's always been like, okay, I'm getting it, I'm feeling it, I am it. And then a week later, a couple of days later, I'm back to normal. And I feel that I always have to just keep on going back. And now it comes to a point when I microdose, the next day I just feel tired and depressed. It's as if like my brain is just tired of, it's like saying, hey, listen, you're abusing me too much right now, and just take a break. So I just want to know if anyone else had that continuity problem, where how do you stay with what you have discovered or learned, or that state of mind?
Yeah. It's a really great question, Miles. Thank you so much for asking that question, because I think that's for me, if I make any points, the point that I'd really like to make tonight is the importance of practice. So if you don't have an established practice, and you're not actually working with the medicines, with the microdosing, what I've noticed is that the changes don't tend to stick. And then the second point is that we don't, again, speaking to what I said earlier, is that I don't think we need to aim for too many changes too quickly. It's just small steps more often, and aiming for that kind of sustainable change, and just being patient with ourselves. So this is not something that I suggest people do for 3 weeks and then you're going to be a different person. It's nothing like that at all. It's, this is the work. There's no shortcut here. This is the work of meeting ourselves. So I think, and again, this doesn't just happen in the microdosing space. In the macrodosing space, it's the same thing. We see people all the time. They're coming to ceremonies for years and years and years, and they're taking big doses and they're not changing. They're not making the movements that they want to be making. And so whether you're doing macro, micro, whatever it is, you can't just rely on the medicines. You have to have some way of processing what comes up and integrating what you get from the medicines. And if you're not doing that, then you're not going to, I don't think you're going to see the changes that you want. So, yeah, my sense is that it's 50-50, microdosing 50 and practice 50. And you don't actually need to microdose. That's the truth. We really don't. If we just practice, and if we just pay attention to ourselves, and if we just present with ourselves and welcome what comes up, we get into this habit of turning our attention back and being able to be present with whatever's here. What we find is that if we can do that more, things tend to change. Not for us trying to will them to change, but naturally they change. You can heal addiction like that. You can heal. There's a center called the Klette Center. He's got a beautiful practice of just semantic awareness, and he heals people from everything, just by paying attention, just by welcoming and getting good at building a habit around simply allowing whatever our experience is, not resisting it. So yeah, my answer there is definitely practice. But great question, Miles. Thank you.
It's if I can just chip in there, Ryan. Yeah, so beautifully articulated, and I really agree so much with what you say. Both Ryan and myself, and Nicole, who's also on this call, who's one of our Iboga facilitators. We all have a common love for a spiritual teacher, namely Adyashanti, whose medicine is silence. And silence is probably one of the most potent medicines. And, essentially, really what the medicines are here to teach us. And I really do believe it's the point where, we can all reach is, it's a energetic roadmap. Once you've ingested a plant, you can access that energetic roadmap again. It's now part of your energetic field, and through a strong spiritual practice, you can connect to that medicine, and especially through silence. And so the more we can spend time in silence, the more sensitive we become, and the more tuned in we become. And whether we're microdosing or not, it's just the importance of making space, because actually, what the plants are doing is they are helping us to connect with our innate higher self, the divine within each and every one of us, the God within, the truth within, the wisdom within. And so the healer is inside you. It's not the plant medicine. It's about getting rid of the noise that's preventing you from listening deeply. And you're only going to be able to listen deeply if you make time and space for that. And do we actually need plants? Yes, you know, at certain times we do. They're an incredible catalyst and support. But the truth of the matter is that, you know, if you look to the East, you know, I mean, they have been using plants, you know, your Buddhists, for example, you know, to attain enlightenment and awakening. They've just been using silence and breath. And, you know, so there's microdosing is lovely because it enables us, it forces us to work with the subtleties. And less, I really do feel is often more. You know, and I'm just seeing so much of people blasting themselves into smithereens with heavy doses of medicines, not understanding that medicines, you know, a plant medicine is what it is. It actually is an identity dissolving substance that you are ingesting in your body. And you know, people will ingest a medicine and then, oh, I don't feel so good now, you know, my life seems to be falling to pieces, so what do? Let me take some more. But actually that's exactly what's supposed to be happening. You've got to now sit and be present with those many layers of death and, you know, identity deconstruction, because really we're here to unlearn, to let go, because the greatest cause of suffering is attachment. And ironically, we are attached, our greatest attachment is to suffering and also to the self. And it is the self, the construct of self, the me, the I, that we are attached to. And it is this me that is causing us so much pain. And then when it starts to die, we resist instead of gracefully, you know, surrendering. And when we surrender, we encounter bliss. Ironic that. But we can only do that, you know, through a practice. And there's so many practices. And you don't need any dogma or religion, you know, because it's actually inside you. But you're only going to find it if you sit and make space for the listening. Yeah, so thank you, Ryan. I hope you don't mind me butting in there.
No, beautiful, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to quickly share the screen so we can actually see the results of the questions that came up, because now that it's actually working, let's just see. So let me show you what questions came up. So the first question was, and it's nice, what's nice about this is it's anonymous. So the first question, which, can everybody see that? You can all see the questions? Nod, yes, yes. Signs of affirmation, great. Where's a good place to get the best microdosing meds? So I'm just going to answer that one for Ryan, because none of us want to go to jail. So the problem is that, unfortunately, a lot of the medicines that we are working with are frowned upon, you know, some much more so than others. So some of them are legal and some of them are not. And so that is why we cannot answer that question. And you are going to have to be industrious and use word of mouth and make friends and figure that one out for yourself. So I'm going to move on to the next question. And Ryan, maybe you would like to answer that one. What's the difference in felt experience between microdosing mushrooms versus San Pedro? Maybe from your experience, or I don't know how you would like to.
It says macrodosing. Macro,
oh, sorry.
micro.
Maybe it's a typo.
Yeah, sorry, that was me. That was a typo.
Oh, typo. Okay.
Yeah.
That's, yeah, I think it's another really good question. We get asked that quite a bit as well. My personal experience, they're very different, actually. The San Pedro tends to give me a bit more energy. So if I'm in a place where I want to be a bit more active, doing more physical work or whatever the case is, then for me, it feels like the San Pedro is a better medicine, because it just kind of, my body feels like it wants to move more, wants to work more. So the mushrooms tend to be, again, this is just personally, tend to be a bit more reflective. I think they go a little deeper in my psyche than the San Pedro does. That's not a rule of thumb. I mean, like, everyone's got different experiences. That's just what I notice in myself, and also with the people that I work with, or that we work with. So hopefully that answers it.
Thank you so much. The 1/10 of usual dosage, does it apply to all or most medicine?
Well, you know, for me, the thing is, what we want to do is connect our intuition with this practice of microdosing. So it's nice to have guidelines, and it's nice to connect with best practices, et cetera. But at the end of the day, when you finding your dose, I think for me, what works the best is that you just check in with your body, and you feel, you know, you might have to experiment a little bit. You take a dose that's a little bit more on the conservative side, on the small side, on a weekend day, you know, not on a weekday when you're about to go into the office or whatever. So a weekend day, and you start a little conservative, and you see how that feels, and you can always work your way up from there. But a 10th, yeah, that's kind of like a general rule, but it definitely doesn't apply to everyone, because we have some people who take a fraction, you know, of a 20th even, and that's sometimes too strong. Or another person might take a 10th and they don't feel anything, and there's no shift at all. So those are kind of outliers, but for most people, usually a 10th. I can't say across all the psychedelics, all the medicines. I'm sure it does vary to some degree, but yeah, you have to just investigate.
Yes, thank you so much, Ryan. You know, I definitely think that that's quite a dangerous rule, you know, for people to be putting out there, you know, especially if you're looking at medicines like iboga, and I think ayahuasca is probably the vaguest one in terms of, you know, microdosing. I don't think that there's really any established microdose. It's more kind of homeopathic, or but there's definitely recommended dosages that have been put out there for the various plants, the entheogens, that is. But, you know, the one thing that I just like to throw in there is that, you know, there's something really interesting about microdosing, because, and I'd really challenge you to look at it beyond a pharmaceutical experience. And it's not so much about the quantity that you're ingesting. It's also, you know, you're working with an energetic being, you know, and I mean, coming from a shamanic perspective, and I mean, you can reject my framework if you choose to, but I really do challenge you to experiment with this, you know, like one tiny piece, you know, even of that plant, you know, you can actually feel and experience. So, for example, microdosing iboga, you know, just like a tiny crumb, for me, you know, can be adequate. I can feel, you know, the medicine in my body, and the same with any other plant. So, and it's also up to you to work with that. So, you know, maybe start with less, and you know, work up. But also, you know, understand that you're working not just with, it's not a pharmacological thing, because, you know, the science, you know, when we start treating entheogens from a Western pharmaceutical perspective, we're missing really the medicine. And, you know, what they've started to do now is they're starting to look at converting psilocybin, for example, into capsule format, and the pharmaceutical companies started to get interested. And they're trying to look at extracting the psychedelic element from these medicines, and the minute they do so, it stops working. And the thing is, when you interfere with a medicine, you're interfering with something. There's a sacredness to it, and I just feel that that's what's been lost, is that we're working with something that's sacred and energetic as well. And I just like to put that out there. And I don't know if anyone else has got any comments in terms of their experiences of quantities or any warnings. The one thing I would really recommend, especially if you're working with microdosing mushrooms, is really be careful, because what I found in my experience is the recommended dosage is 0.2 grams. Is that correct? And for myself, if I had to take that, I cannot read. The world is a very colorful place. So, everybody does have different sensitivities, and to go out into the world and engage in a professional capacity under those circumstances is a very interesting experience, I must tell you. So just be very cautious. All right, super, thank you. Let's have a look at our next question, Ryan. Does one have to have been on a main journey in order to benefit from microdosing?
To me, no. I don't think it matters at all. I think you go with what you're drawn to go with. So no, I don't think that at all. I think they work very well together. I think what you might find if you start microdosing, that I think you would find, if someone hadn't been on a bigger journey and they were microdosing, I think it would be quite natural for them to say, okay, well, actually, I'd like to try a bigger dose at some point. I think I don't think there'd be many people who wouldn't want to do that. But that being said, I'm sure people just microdose. It happens too.
Yeah. And, I think microdosing is also lovely for people who have a lot of fear around plants. It's a great way for them to be able to work with them and engage them. And maybe they never actually need to go on that big journey, what I was saying earlier to Ryan is the experience of microdosing is a ceremony. I find that an extended microdosing experience takes you through the various stages of a journey, so to speak. The struggle, the death, the catharsis, the purging, the rebirth. And so a microdosing protocol has those different aspects to it. And some of them you get to actually sit in that discomfort, and you've got to sit in it. And it can be an extended period where you have to sit and be present with it, because like in a ceremony, there is a period of sitting until you get to purge and, break through to the realization, release the poison, the negativity, and break through to the catharsis. And the same with the microdosing protocol. And I think I've often witnessed that with people with microdosing, is that, for example, some people may start microdosing psilocybin expecting it to be an antidepressant and to have instant antidepressant results, and actually go deeper into a depression. And what is actually happening is they're going into the purge, but it's the part before the purge. So you've got to go into the underworld first so that you can find, the medicine and start releasing it. And it's about being present with the process and trusting the process. And that's why I loved, Ryan's topic, microdosing as a ceremony, because sometimes it's not an instant result where, whoa, I'm microdosing today, I'm going to be happy. And if anyone wants to share any experiences as we go along, please feel free. I promise to stop talking so much. I just get very excited about this topic. Sorry, Ryan.
No worries.
Do you do retreats or test studies? Ryan, good one for you.
Do you do retreats or test studies? Test studies. Well, I don't know quite what you mean by test studies. Do you know what they mean by test studies?
Sorry,
Maybe-
so that was my question. It's a bit like I didn't really have time, I didn't read it properly. So what I meant is that, so for example, place like Johns Hopkins University, they'll get people together and they'll do like studies, you know, where, and I was just wondering here in South Africa, there are, because I like your story, you told us about the San Pedro, the 21 days, how you guys all went together. So for me, a retreat will be kind of like, okay, guys, we're doing this, but test studies will be, hey, everyone, you kind of like being volunteer for us to explore more into this realm. So I was wondering if those kind of events were still happening or here in South Africa.
Yes, thank you, Miles. That's, wow, you're full of good questions. Eh? Amazing. Well, just to go to the second part of your study, I've been reaching out, and I'll continue to reach out to some of the universities overseas, and MAPS is another good place to check out. There's a lot of psychedelic or entheogenic research coming out, and on microdosing, it's like I said, it's a new field, but they're starting to research on microdosing. So I would love to find some way to be connected with an institution so I could get involved in more formal research. But until that happens, I don't plan to do anything even close to that, because you need funding and you need support and you need all that stuff. So that's not really my interest outside of being connected to an organization. And then the retreats, we do like a retreat with microdosing, but a retreat in your life. So how we structure our programs is we basically have, they're usually 3 weeks, but we've moved them to 4 weeks now. We're finding 4 weeks is a better rhythm. And all we do is we theme it, so we have an intention. And then every week we send practices. So you'll get a set of practices in your email box. You're part of a group, so we don't take more than 8 people. So you're part of a group of 8, it's like a pod. And then we do weekly check-ins. So like an online space where, you check in with your group. And that's a really cool thing to do, because you get to hear other people's experiences. And those stories and those insights are often relevant for us. So we're finding that the group check-ins are really cool. And then so it's kind of like a retreat in your normal life. And I think that's quite a powerful way to do it. And then the practices are pretty much what I've mentioned here, but we extend them. So depending on what we're doing and what our intentions are, and we bring practices around those intentions. So sometimes it's family constellations. We use Enneagram, or that's a personality map. We use meditation or mindfulness. So there's a whole bunch of practices that we draw from, writing, etc., etc. But yeah, that's basically the retreats. You do it in your home, in your work, in your life. And then Miles, the next one is starting on the 21st of this month. Yeah.
And then we have a comment. Okay. The difference between mushrooms and San Pedro. I think we've covered that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the recommended period for microdosing before a break should be taken?
Well, I think it depends what you're microdosing for. Again, I'd refer you to that book, A Really Good Day. She's got a pretty much, I think, quite an average story for kind of this Western context where most of us get to 40 or maybe 30 or even 45, 50. And we in some way battle with mood, with depression, with anxiety. To some degree, we've got a list of concerns that we want to attend to. So I think that's become quite normal, and she speaks from that point of view, having I think she's a lawyer, or she's in a profession, so she has a very formal job, etc., etc. But she microdosed for 6 months, and she basically healed her depression, virtually brought her anxiety down to a very normal level, But obviously it wasn't just 6 months. And again, I guess this is a good time to speak about rhythm. Definitely, if you're doing 6 months of microdosing, it's not just a straight 6 months. You're going to take a week break in each month. And when you're doing the microdosing every week, you're probably going to be microdosing 3 or 4 times. So depending on what cycle you're doing, some people do 1 day on and then 2 days off, or there's 5 days on, 2 days off, 4 days on, 3 days off. There's so many different protocols. You've got to find a rhythm that works for you. But 6 months, if you really want to get deep into your psyche, I think, and heal some of the things, maybe it's past trauma or whatever it is, I think 3 to 6 months for most people would be a good time frame. Like I said, we kind of just do a month at a time, but a month is usually enough to get people on their own steam, in their own, because once you've got a practice that fits for you, that works for you, that feels good for you, then it's just a question of building that practice, whatever that is. And then just staying connected with your intuition and then just following the steps that naturally arise. But yeah, I'd say my sense is 3 to 6 months for most people is a good time frame. And then what happens for a lot of people who continue microdosing is, as a practice or as a lifestyle, is you might find like 1 month a year or 3 weeks a year, you might just do a top up or just like a refresher. That's one way to look at it. Or, it's different for everyone, but I think if you just kind of stay tuned to yourself, then, you'll find the right movements.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Is it death of the ego or more just calming the ego?
For me, that's the biggest danger of all, thinking that we have to kill our ego. You show me someone who's killed their ego and I'll show you some kind of an institution, because I don't think that's a good idea. Let's not do that. No need to kill the ego. There's the death, for me, there's parts of the ego that die. I mean, you can think of the phoenix, the cycle of life and death and rebirth, that there's parts of us that die. And again, our teachers talk about time in the ashes. I think it's a beautiful way to think about this, is that we do have to spend time in the ashes, which is a place of unknown. And then things get reborn in us, and that we can rebirth something. But that same cycle continues. There's always something that's going to die. There's always and we eventually die. Sooner or later, that time is coming too. But until that happens, this experience of dying, the parts of us that die, I think that just continues on. But then there's a cycle. Something gets reborn, and we rise again like the phoenix from the ashes. So I don't think we need to think about ego dying, but rather parts of us that aren't really relevant anymore. There are parts that can die, which is a good thing. And calming ego can't be calmed.
Thank you, Ryan. Should you take the dose on an empty stomach or with breakfast, and does this differ between plants?
Well, one of the things that I like to do is sometimes to do a fasting protocol, and we do that sometimes as well. So we'll do like intermittent fasting. So you only eat, say you skip breakfast, you only eat at 12 or 1, and you might microdose with a little bit of black coffee. That's one way to do it. Or, if you were just doing a normal diet, you might have breakfast, and I would say probably having your microdose with food would be a little bit better, but I don't know how much better. But I'm not quite sure about that one. I do think that for me, I just feel it works well with coffee, but I might be wrong.
Sign me up for that one.
Yeah, a little bit of black coffee. It's a medicine.
Yeah, I'm on a permanent black coffee microdose myself.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
It's easy.
I think also, some people may find that some of the medicines may not go down so well on an empty stomach. So
Yeah.
I think you're going to have to, work with yourself personally on that one.
Yeah, if you feel queasy, then you probably need to have some food. And if you don't, then you're probably fine.
Does the strain of the mushroom impact the experience? Maybe it's one I could answer, right?
Yes, good idea. Yeah.
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 Look, in terms of, look, if you're working with microdosing psilocybin, it's probably more important to know who you got the medicine from, because we had a case where someone was growing medicine and they had an armed robbery, and those mushrooms, everyone who worked with those mushrooms kept having those images of trauma and guns and violence. So there was an energetic imprint that was formed, and I think it's important to make sure you're getting your medicine from an integrous source. In terms of psilocybin, generally psilocybin cubensis, does vary slightly, but for microdosing purposes, it's not really that serious in terms of what you're using. But you don't want to microdose an exotic strain, commonly known as penis envy, which is at least 5 times stronger than psilocybin. The normal one is also quite dark by nature. And I can speak from personal experience after doing a dieta with that. And I could say it was many layers of death and chaos and really unpleasant. So it's rather to stick with standard psilocybin and avoid the exotic, mushrooms for microdosing. The next one, what about, I assume microdosing ayahuasca compared to mushrooms? Ryan, I don't know if you want to answer that one for us quickly. Anything you'd like to say about microdosing ayahuasca? Or
all I'd say is the first time I heard about that was in our community in Brazil. We're in Florianopolis, just south of Brazil. What they do, if anyone's sick or if anyone's got flu or if anyone's got anything wrong with them, the first thing that they do is they give them little bits of ayahuasca every day. So that's standard practice for them. And it's not a lot. It's just, I don't even know what the dose is, but it's definitely microdosing. They call it homeopathic dosing. So the first thing they would do is just give them a little homeopathic dose for like a week or so. And they say it works for many ailments, many physical problems. I've never microdosed with IA before.
Yeah. I've actually experienced that. I've had my homeopathic dose of ayahuasca to get rid of the flu. It definitely did work. It's such a precious medicine. There are other treatments for flu, but it is a bit of a much more rocky ride, I would say, than microdosing psilocybin. And how do we get in touch for someone to assist with the 3 to 6 month microdosing with weekly check-in? I think that Ryan is a really good person. So I think you've got the answer for your question there. We will also be bringing on board other speakers who will be talking more specifically about mushroom microdosing. Not that they are facilitators as such. We've got international speakers, symposia, who we're going to try and reach out to. And we also would like to do a talk on iboga microdosing, if possible, in the future, because it's such a complex medicine. It really does deserve its own talk. So those are ideas that we've got. So that brings us to the end of the question session. What I'd like to ask everyone to do is to quickly just go back to Mentimeter and just very quickly, you've got an opportunity just to enter your, sorry, let me just do this for you. I don't know why. Okay, there we go. It should, hold on, activate slide. There we go. No, this is so annoying. Okay. It's working on mine. There, let's see. Sorry. Hold on. You should see two more slides pop up. Even if you just get tell me if you've seen two more slides. There should be one slide before this, which is what topics would you like us to cover next? Are you getting that slide? What topics would you like us to cover next? And it shouldn't have answers. Maybe someone who's on Mentimeter can just answer for me. What topics would you like us to cover next? Is anyone getting that slide? If not, we'll just type it into chat. Maybe Miles, I don't know if you're on, I think you're on. Are you getting that slide? What topics would you like us to cover next?
Yeah, I'm getting the slide, Ilana.
Oh, good. So okay, great. So if you can type in some, if you guys wouldn't mind typing in some answers, some topics for us, because it's information for us so that we know, what we can bring you guys next. And then, so I'm just going to give you 30 seconds just to type in a few random topics. And I'm not going to go through them. It's just for us to collate information. Just go back to screen sharing. And then I'm going to move us to our final slide. Please enter 3 emotions that just to rate your experience of this talk. 3 emotions just to rate your experience of this talk and what it's going to do, which is something I think that Ryan will enjoy. It will construct a word cloud for us. Look at that. So what's happening is when more than one of you have used the same word, the word grows in size. So we get to test the temperature of the room. It's quite cute, eh? Yay! Look at that. It's great when it works. We're still learning the technology, but it's actually quite beautiful when it actually does what it's supposed to, which admittedly I think is more of a user problem at this point. On my side, not yours. Yay! Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you, guys. Awesome. Great feedback. Thank you. Okay. So the final thing that I wanted to do, and I'm just going to see if I can view my chat box. Where is my chat box? Here we go. So our next Plant People event, just to let you know, is going to be not this Friday or the next one, but the one that follows. So 3 weeks time. And we actually happen to have our next speaker present in the room, in the group. I don't know if she has a microphone though, because it would be lovely if she could say hello. Nicole, would you like to say hello and just give us, just a 1 minute introduction and tell us what you're going to be speaking about, because I think people are going to be so excited.
Yes, thank you, Alana. Really grateful and happy to be able to share it in this community after such a wonderful talk this evening, and to see how caringly the forum has been opened with such good information and experience. Yeah, so the talk that we will be doing, it will be myself and Sean. Are you also going to be sitting with the talk?
Yeah, I'll probably come and hang out with you.
Okay, great. So Sean and myself run an iboga practice. We're running a practice in a non-traditional context, but at the same time, we are practicing with Bwiti. And Bwiti is the intelligence behind iboga. And so my teacher is Mandrake. It is the pathway of the chameleon. And my initiatory father is Sean, and his roots go into Gabon. And so, yeah, our practice is running in a non-traditional context, but we're still experiencing the spirit of this plant in a particular way. And the way it exhibits itself through a very extraordinarily ordinary way of being. So we're going to share on that, and we're going to share on any topics or questions that come up around that. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Basi. Thank you so much, Nicole, and Sean in the background, wherever you may be. So a very, very exciting talk. We're going to be talking about the magic of Bwiti and how Nicole and Sean have adapted their practice to make it accessible, to Westerners, which is really beautiful. So those of you that are interested, because this is a medicine from our own continent. And, it's really beautiful just to learn more about this very potent African medicine and the tradition behind it. And what does Bwiti mean? What is Bwiti, and how do we live Bwiti in our lives? So, what does that actually mean? And I can't think of two better people to open up the floor and to discuss this. So we're really looking forward to that topic, and I hope you guys are too. So thank you for sharing, Nicole. So Ryan, I'd just like to go back to you and just ask if you've got anything that you would like to add just as we wrap up for tonight. And yeah, maybe you could just share the slide again with your contact details for everyone, just in case they've forgotten, if you've still got it available. But yeah, I think from all of us, we are so really, really grateful for such a beautifully articulated, coherent flow of information with so much food for thought. And thank you so much for the effort that you've put together, you've put in to put this really wonderful topic, together for us tonight.
Thank you so much, Alana, for opening the space for us and just welcoming me in and allowing me to do this talk. It was a great joy. I really enjoyed doing this. It's a passion of mine, so it was very easy to do. And really appreciate everyone listening and your attention and your interest. And I'm going to post my details in the chat.
Fantastic.
If anyone wants to connect, then there they are.
Marvelous, marvelous. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed tonight. Judging by the word cloud, it looks like we had a good experience. So thank you so much for your contributions, for bearing with us as we experimented with some new technology just to have some fun. And thank you all so much for showing up and for being who you are. And stay strong, stay safe, and I hope that you join us for the talk in 3 weeks' time. All right, so you can all come off mute now, and let's give Ryan a big round of applause.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Enjoy the
guys.
rest of
Bye-bye.
the evening. Have
Thank
a
you
great
so much.
Thank you, Lana.
great
Thanks,
weekend.
everyone.
Thank you. Okay. Bye. We will upload this to YouTube, but don't worry, none of the chat will be there. Bye.
Thank you so much, guys. That was so helpful. Bye.
Such a pleasure. Bye.